All right, YouTube, I never envisioned this, but there are actually quite a few people who ask me about the topic of caring for or raising children from a satanic perspective. Having been a member on various satanic groups, pro tip, I'm not a Satanist anymore. I affiliate with paganism now. And the occult, which makes me arguably more superstitious, or at least atheistic Satanists would claim. Satanism, as properly understood as a philosophy, really has a lot more in common with pagan philosophy as opposed to Judeo Christian philosophy. If you look at parenting practices within most of the developed world, what you're seeing is the result of various different strains of Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, their impact on what is seen as socially acceptable or unacceptable, as well as modern philosophical secularism. Some people within Abrahamism say atheism's a religion. It's not a religion, but it has become a sort of philosophy in the same manner that Satanism is. Most people still think it means devil worship. It doesn't. So I'll be referring here, and when I refer to Satanism in any past video, I'm talking about atheistic philosophical Satanism. I'm talking about the Romanticist era Satan as the fallen angel, the rebel who rebelled against a tyrannical and evil and despotic God, which was mostly concerned with grinding down various life forms, including the celestial. I'm not referring to the devil in the way in which a Bible thumping Christian would refer to the devil. As far as the topic of how would paganism or Satanism ascribe child rearing, that is, taking care of your children, teaching them, instructing them, the way in which the authentic pagan tradition, the authentic satanic tradition, looks at such a subject is in Abrahamism, you've got the concept of punish your child if they do the wrong thing, they will not do it again. You know, spare the rod, spoil the child. Within paganism, and even certain early Abrahamism, you might think of the Gnostic tradition or something, and certainly within Satanism, the concept is teach them critical thinking and they will not go astray. The only exception would be you also then have to tell them this world is a world of nonsense that is partially run by lunatics. The lunatics are running the asylum. A lot of people out there in the world do not use common sense. They do not have respect for any form of legal authority, even those that make sense. Or they respect a legal authority that's illegitimate. They don't really care about freedom. Most people in the world today really are slaves, don't realize it, and they're not, uncomfortable with it when you tell them that they are, because they feel that it makes them safe. It doesn't, but that's how they feel. Most people in the world want to be led, they want to be controlled. It's like a fetish for them. They're masochistic. They wouldn't be capable of functioning in a free society. Many people in this world today, especially in places where there's never been a great deal of freedom. You would look at parts of Europe. Increasingly, they are barbaric, tyrannical, especially within the European Union. The governments there exercise complete control over every possible detail of life at a whim. People are too weak to stand up to them. It will get worse. There will be a tipping point, but most of those people, they couldn't really function in a truly free society. If you put them in the jungle, they will quickly die. They wouldn't know how to obtain food. They wouldn't have self discipline enough not to go crazy. They would not persist. Most humans fall into this category, and a great many others that can survive in sort of the absence of general authority are just a bunch of tribalist morons, basically, that don't really. They couldn't construct a wheel. They're savages. They're primitive people around the world. I don't speak by the way of just, oh, well, these non-white people are primitive. I'm not talking about that. There are people within the white world who are exactly the same. There are people within the developed world that are exactly the same. So don't think I'm making a racial statement. I should probably cover that general concept in a future video. But you need to teach your children, if you want them to succeed in the world, teach them critical thinking. If you tell a child or a young adult, well, this is wrong, what's the first thing that they're going to do? They're Luciferian. They're going to rebel. They're going to do exactly what you told them not to do. And by the way, the reverse psychology trick does not work. Speaking as somebody who was once a child not too that many years ago, reverse psychology, they can see through that. Don't be a complete fucking moron. Of course they can. They know when you're just telling them, they know when you're telling them not to do something that you actually want them to do, or vice versa. It's fairly obvious. It doesn't require that much reason. Far better to teach them critical thinking. And instead of saying, don't do this, or I will, give you a spanking, I'm not going to spare the rod, or something like that. Teach them why they shouldn't do that. And if you can't find a legitimate, sensible, reasonable way to explain that, then perhaps you shouldn't be telling them not to do that. One sensible thing would be, oh, well, I don't really care, and there's not really an objective moral problem with it, but it's against the law. For instance, telling little Timmy, no, don't smoke weed. Well, why? Well, weed's not actually bad for you. It's not actually addictive. The government's full of shit, but you'll probably get dragged off to jail if you get caught doing it. There's your reasoning for why you shouldn't smoke weed, Jimmy. This will generally work better than simply saying don't do it. They do it anyway, and then they do get caught, they get carted off to jail. Well, you're a bad parent. Well, you didn't teach them critical thinking. That's the only thing that the parent has done wrong. It's not that what they told them not to do was objectively some horrible, tyrannical thing that they were ordering them to do that's against human nature, so much as you've piqued your child's curiosity. And they don't have a reason not to do what you've told them not to do. You haven't given them one. If you don't give a reason, there's no reason for the rule to be obeyed. Now, many people will fall in line regardless. Many people, like sheep, you tell them to do anything, they'll do it. They don't have a mind of their own. From a young age, they're just told, oh, obey the parent, obey the teacher, obey this, obey that. I mean, they're perfect slaves. They're not the sort of people that you want forming a free society. They're the sort of people you want forming a slave society. They'd be perfect slaves. If you took them back a few thousand years, that's exactly what they would be. And they'd be fairly good at it. They might gripe, they might groan, but they're certainly not going to rebel against authority because they're too afraid to do so, either afraid of physical punishment or afraid of being ostracized, afraid of not being accepted. I would point out the sort of bandwagon approach used in advertising takes use of this. The concept of popularity, the concept of sort of the cliques you see in school, it all operates on the same exact principle. Fall in line or you're an outcast. Fall in line or we'll make jokes about you. Fall in line or we'll physically bully you. It's all exactly the same sort of thing. If your child understands critical thinking, though, they will understand that while those cool, popular kids who are potentially doing things that are against the law or get them kicked out of school or something, they may understand that clique of individuals is not going to be cool down the line. Down the line, they're going to be washing dishes part-time. Little Jimmy knows enough not to do that and tries to study. Your child doesn't have to be a straight-A student to succeed in life. It's just not necessary. In fact, I can remember this myself. A lot of parents, they're very worried about their child's grades in elementary school and even into middle school without realizing that ultimately the way our college system works in the United States, not necessarily other parts of the developed world, but certainly here in the United States, essentially, most colleges don't really care about anything other than you've had a decent GPA and you got a good SAT score and you know how to write their entry essay. That's really what they look at, and your color of skin. By the way, it may behoove you to teach your children that even though most people aren't openly racist, don't really hate others because of their skin color, the intrinsic visible differences between the races really have formed a lot of legal bullshit right now that really does impact their lives, for better or for worse. If you're a black family, you'd tell your child, well, yeah, you're more likely to get beaten down randomly by a cop. At the same time, you enjoy the fact that you're more likely to get into a good college if you have any sense at all. For your white kid, you can say, oh, well, you're privileged enough not to get beaten down, but, you probably shouldn't be looking at that college because the chances of you getting in with your fucking 3.5 pretty damn low. So why don't you go to this state college instead and just settle for that? By the way, that's another thing I would tell the younger me. I'd say, fuck UVM, fuck universities. In fact, almost fuck college. Go to a community college for the first 4 years and then go to a state college. It's a hell of a lot cheaper. Just commute. Be easier in the long run. Would have been cheaper. Yes, the satanic and pagan explanation of taking care of your children excoriates the concept of corporal punishment. That is, hitting your child. What the fuck does that teach them other than, oh, the person who's stronger is in charge? Well, yes, that may be the brutish way that it works under the law of the jungle, and there is something to be said for that within human culture, but you've just taught your child that you are not a reasonable, sane, developed human being. You're a savage. And the only reason they should listen to you is because otherwise you're going to spank them or take away their toys or something. What does this teach them intrinsically? To a child who emotionally cannot accept being told no in all circumstances. Sometimes yes, sometimes they can't stand the thought. Little Jimmy wants, that sugary cereal. He's not taking no for an answer, but he's worried that you're going to slap him if he keeps talking about it. What does little Jimmy do? Learns how to talk behind your back, learns sarcasm, which isn't always bad. It makes for good stand-up comedians, I suppose. And learns how to evade getting caught doing something that you've told them not to do. And it will continue. They're going to rebel anyway. Your child's going to do things. Your child's probably going to try drugs. No, they're probably not going to become an addict, and they're almost certainly not going to OD and die. Your child will probably have premarital sex. Does this mean that they're going to run off and get abducted by a cartel or get AIDS or something? Probably not. It didn't happen to me. I know I fall into that category of premarital sex, of course. I mean, that sort of thing is just not particularly common. Every parent worries about their child, but if you stifle them in with just layers and layers of telling them what to do and what not to do, and you haven't given them a reason to listen to you, your words mean nothing. You have no authority over them. You don't have any moral authority because you haven't actually shown that you yourself are particularly rational. You haven't given a reason for these things. It's like, don't eat the mud. Why? Why wouldn't I eat the mud? Well, it may not actually make you sick, but it just looks like shit. Don't eat the fucking mud. It's gross. Other people around you are going to find it disgusting. And then, of course, occasionally there's nothing you can do, even if you've taught them reason. Occasionally there will be times when a little bit of narcissism creeps in. I had this problem as a kid. Okay, I still do. I like to piss people off from time to time. In this modern age and culture in which, people, by the time they're in kindergarten, are typing away on smartphones, which, by the way, stop getting all moral about that. That's just the same as, kids watching too much TV back in the 70s. Oh, it'll rot their brain. Well, it didn't rot their brain. Those are the people controlling the world right now. Yeah, they're full of shit. Well, so will we be. So will the next generation be. There's nothing you can fucking do about it. The smartphones are there to stay. The laptop computers are there. The internet's really cool. Everyone likes to make YouTube videos. Everyone likes to make Facebook posts, Twitter and Instagram and Snapchat and all this stuff. It's not going anywhere, really. The video games and the computers and so forth, it's just a complete moot point. You're not going to keep them off the internet. All these schools saying, well, we'll control what students can and cannot see and can and cannot do on the internet when they're not at school. Unconstitutional. They will eventually be recognized as such, just like all the other fucking useless laws we have in this country. But there will be times when your, commands or your suggestions are disobeyed, no matter how reasonable you are. Then it's time for a little bit more punishment, I would say. I still don't believe in hitting a kid. It's the same as beating your wife because she didn't make your favorite breakfast, or kicking your dog because the dog peed on the carpet, or throwing your cat across the room. It's abusive. It is child abuse. That's how I see it. I don't care if you grew up fine because even after you got spanked, or I used to get, whipped and I grew up fine. No, you're most likely a slave. That's most likely your mentality. You don't have a great grasp of common sense and reason. That's the problem. Your measure of growing up fine is your ability to memorize things and take commands. Well, that qualifies you to be a grunt in the military. It qualifies you to do brute labor or pick cabbages or something. Does this qualify you as being a particularly skilled critical thinker? No. It qualifies you for little more than being an easily controlled peasant. This could explain, by the way, people's fucking voting trends in the world. Why they vote for the lesser of two evils, why they vote for complete morons. Just goes to show you, with as dumbed down as the populace is, there's no need to rig the elections because they all suck. That's my prediction. But yes, I know I'm only slightly on topic here. I may or may not have had a little bit of wine earlier. But that would be a satanic and pagan feeling on how to raise your kids. For those who have been curious, for anyone who may be curious, and I know I've had a couple people say, where's all the satanic material? Don't worry, there's more satanic material to come. You just have to understand I no longer call myself a Satanist because I'm not really an atheist. I'm apatheistic and don't care at this point. It just doesn't matter to me. The issue has been done to death by everybody on the fucking internet. I don't have an interest in it. It's just like I lost my interest in talking about Charles Manson. There was a time when it was interesting to me. Now it's like 100 fucking hours of video watching and dozens of videos I made later. It's been completely exhausted. I'm not going to keep digging the pit all the way to China. I stopped somewhere around the upper mantle, and that's where it's going to stay, as far as Charles Manson goes and as far as Satanism goes. But yes, as a pagan, I still retain a respect for the general philosophy. What does this say about children? Explicitly, I mean, this is even in Anton LaVey's own work. Don't hurt children. Don't hurt animals. Kind of fucking self-explanatory. If your child is incapable of reason, hitting them's not going to get the point across. And if they are, then why aren't you reasoning with them? It's as fucking simple as that. Alexander the Great's father, and I think most people would agree, even if you think he was a little bit butcherous or maybe a little bit nuts or something, probably one of the more, monumental figures in ancient history. That's exactly what his dad did. He didn't use court. It was very strange for the time. Most people back then, they would hit their kids if they did something they didn't like. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't hit your kid's hand away from the electric outlet, or they're about to, touch the scalding water and you have to hit their hand away. That's not what I'm saying. I'm talking about like taking them and spanking them or something. I'm completely against it. If I had a kid, I wouldn't spank him. No, not under any circumstance. I don't care how bad what they did was. I'd sit them down and I would do what a reasonable person would do. I would give them a reason why I'm upset. I would ask them not to do it again, give them reasons why they shouldn't do it again, tell them the possible consequences. And if I felt they weren't listening to me, I'd be a little bit irked. And, for a child that has been raised in such a way, there will presumably be affection between child and parent. You enjoy, walking in the woods or whatever. As opposed to an abusive parent that just beats their kid all the time. There's no affection there. The child's just going to eventually wander off or something. And they should. They shouldn't have to deal with that. Therefore, if you simply remove your presence, make it clear that you're upset, they will emotionally understand that fact and they will not want to do that behavior again. But again, that should be saved for after. You should use reason first. The sort of emotional part should come later. Just say, okay, well, I don't think you're listening to me. I'm going to go and do something else. And then just, spend a few minutes or hours letting them bask in the fact that their parent, who they actually care about because their parent's not a shitfuck, is upset. They'll come around. They'll understand what you're talking about. That's the proper way to raise kids. If you want them to be something more than just a cretinous slave or a zealot or something like that. And like I've said before, I pointed this out with Christianity. I saw myself firsthand, and I'm sure this is quite common because I've heard tales of it. Oftentimes, you get some zealot parent that rants about Jesus all day. Their child turns out to be a complete atheist, or just generally anti-theistic in general. As they hate religion, they hate the church, they hate Christ, they hate everything about it because the parent's a shitfuck. Well, if you're hitting your child all the time, what you're going to end up with, presumably, you're either going to end up with a child who's completely out of balance and hitting other people to get the point across. Oh, well, why is little Jimmy beating his wife? He was raised so well. No, he wasn't. You were spanking him all the time. Or they end up very, very passive. They become like the card carrying Dilbert fan. Literally, they have the little pocket protector, and they go and sit by the by the water cooler at lunch and things like that. They become very passive, low testosterone males, or females that would seek after potentially an abusive male, which is also, I don't think the average person, even someone who maybe does have a mad streak, probably doesn't want their daughter dating somebody or marrying somebody who's going to beat on them all the time. Well, you're setting yourself up for being upset on that token if you're doing that to your own daughter. Treat your children the way you would want their potential spouse in the future to treat them, and it makes a little bit more sense. So yeah, a little bit of a tipsy how Satanists and pagans would presumably raise their children if they weren't mental video there. And you can compare this to Abrahamism, where you're supposed to beat your kid every day, I guess, and it makes them a better person. I'm not sure exactly how that works, but it's right there in the Bible, next to the part where they're bashing babies' heads on rocks and wiping out entire cities full of women and children because they want more land. This is the stuff that's in their fucking book. It's actually, if it weren't potentially telling a partially true story, it would be funny. But that's just sad. Think about all the hundreds of thousands of people they raped and killed and tore their bodies apart, just burned their city down on top of the corpses. That was the so-called chosen people of Sinai. Yeah, what a nice bunch they were. What a great Bible that is. That's about all. Peace out.